Praises be Lord Vonnegut. Amen. I like this book, Spencer.
I liked it as well.
But not enough to talk about it. Episode over.
Bye.
Oh, boy. Oh, yeah, I forgot we're not doing a cold open. So I am your host for the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast that you are now listening to. See how I threw that in there.
Now they know what they're listening to.
Make sure they know for sure.
As if they didn't know when they downloaded it and then hit the play button and then, you know.
We actually have quite a bit of people in India who steal our content and put it on their blogs.
Oh, yeah?
So it's quite possible that people listen to this and do not know it's the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast unless I say that. Because I don't know what they title it.
True.
I just know, like, it gives me the ping back and it's like, oh, Sanji shared whatever. But then you go on their blog and it's all in a different, you know, Hindi or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, you see our post, but not in English. And I'm like, are they stealing? I don't know. I don't really care. If I was making money off of this, maybe I would. Anyway, I am your host, Caleb James, not Sanji today. With me today, Spencer, the Martian Man Witch Maker Church.
I was wondering if it was going to be, like, story related.
Are man witches still a thing?
Probably.
How I never understood. What made a man witch and not a sloppy Joe? Was it just a brand of sloppy Joe mix or something?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure I ate those as a child,
It's
but I
probably
don't.
the cheap kind, I would assume, right?
All pig anus. Is that a 50% pig anus? All pig anus. Today we are, for the book of the month, The Sirens of Titan by Mr. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. This is the second book he wrote. A couple notes before we start, because what I'm going to do, because this is a very convoluted book, I'm just going to read the plot synopsis like off of Wikipedia or something. That way we don't have to just like shittily explain the plot as we go, and we could just touch on the themes, or else we'll be here all day.
Right.
What I do know about this book is he wrote it very quickly for money.
Yeah.
And it didn't really have much of an editor. Maybe it did like a proofreading pass, but I don't think it had an actual editor to keep this in line. I forget if it was the editor like quit or got fired or whatever it was. They just put the book out, and it kind of does show because this book does skip all over the place. It's intentional, but obviously if you had an editor, it'd be like Slaughterhouse-Five. It'd be reeled back and more understandable.
There was a decent time gap between his first book
In this one.
and this book. I think, you know, there was some short stories and stuff in between there.
Well, I think he kind of wrote this like it was going to be his last book, because up to this point, he, like you said, his first book and then a big space in his second book. I don't think he thought he was going to become like the great writer that he was.
No, the story I heard whenever I was like looking up videos and reviews and stuff about this, the story I heard was like he was just at a party with some like friends, and like somebody was like, "Hey, you should write another book." And he was like, "Yeah, I should write another book." And they went off into a separate room and they kind of hashed out the main story, you know, of the book, and then wrote it, you know, very quickly, like you were saying.
Well, from what I gathered from his biography, I did not know that his family was super rich.
Yeah.
And his mom and dad were like very hands off. And I bring that up because that's like the protagonist in the story. And what is really interesting is, like, they were very rich and well-to-do, but they kind of ignored him for the most part. I think he was just raised by, like, maids and shit. But then his parents went broke during the stock market crash, the Great Depression. And then it's like, that. I'm just, like, from Slaughterhouse-Five and reading this as the two major works I've read of his already, and then just some of his short stories. It's like, oh, these themes, like loneliness and stuff, really seem to show up in his work, and he's taking that from his actual life. So I always thought, like the Dresden thing in Slaughterhouse-Five, he was in the Dresden bombing, survived that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what he's taking, you know, his service record and stuff is what he's getting inspiration for the story. But I didn't realize, like, his whole childhood. Because, like, you read this, but, like, this rich guy who ends up, like, going broke and all this stuff. And you're like, oh, it's just a wild fantasy story. But it's like, no, that actually happened to his family. So he actually had some, you know, personal touch with that. So from here on out, how long is this good? Okay, this shouldn't take too long. So I'll just give you the quick overview plot. Anyone, I don't know, skip 5 minutes ahead or something, because this is going to be all spoilers. I'm going to spoil the whole book for you.
Well, I mean, I guess we should go without saying that this, yeah.
I hate when people go into a review of something and they get mad when you spoil it. It's like, what the fuck are you watching a review before you watch a movie? Why are you reading reviews on books before you read the book?
Though I do see some things where they have like non-spoiler reviews, I guess.
Which is good when you want to look forward to something in a book. Like, I want some themes to be able to point out, or I do that when it comes to things like the Ulysses, like more dense literature that's hard to understand. I'll read a lot about it before I read it. But those are the ones too. It's like that's not going to be spoiled for you.
Yeah, but I mean, like I could see that aspect of like I don't know if I want to spend the time to jump into this book or movie or show without at least knowing something about it beforehand, but not having the big thing revealed.
But if you're reading something like The Shining or anything that would have like a major twist at the end or something, don't read reviews on it that are going to have spoilers.
And I think we have a pretty good track record of anytime we talk about anything, it's always spoiled.
Always, everything.
It's always I have such a hard time trying to explain something to somebody
without spoiling it.
Yeah, it's so hard.
This novel begins with an omniscient comment. Everyone now knows how to find the meaning of life within himself, but mankind wasn't always so lucky. And we start off with Mr. Malachi Constant. Through this entire book, because I've never read the name Malachi and did not know how it was spelled, I thought his name was Malachi. The whole book I read it. And it wasn't until we were driving to the movies and you said, oh, he says something about Malachi. I was like, who the fuck is Malachi? I was like, oh, that's his name. That makes so much better. That's more. Why would it be Malachi? I was thinking he was like a Spaniard.
To make you feel better, I wasn't 100% sure how to pronounce his name either. It wasn't until I started watching like reviews and stuff
that you got Malachi.
And I was like, okay, all right.
Well, it's spelled Malachi. I would have never guessed that was Malachi. Because in every instance, like the Bible and stuff, that Malachi is present, I've never read it. And I don't know many Amish people. So, Malachi, not Malachi. But Malachi I like Malachi. Because they had the dolls at the end that were hanging. I was like, little Malachis off the tree. It sounded so much better in my head than little Malachis.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a bunch of little Malachi dolls hanging off the tree. Like, that doesn't sound good. I like little Malachis. It made me think of maracas or something cheerful. Little Malachis is just weird. I just think of little Amish guys with big fucking sideburns. If you haven't tuned out now after that debacle, Malachi Constant is the richest man in a future North America, and it's very interesting to see future North America is written in 1950s.
Well, I like how richest man on the planet, and it's only like 2 billion.
Yeah.
Like, you get sneezed at for now, like, if you're trying to come into the big boys club with $2 billion.
Yeah, pretty soon that won't even be considered a billionaire. They'll just up the number somehow. So Malachi Constant possesses extraordinary luck that he attributes to divine favor, which he has used to build upon his father's fortune. He becomes the center point of a journey that takes him from Earth to Mars in preparation for an interplanetary war, to Mercury with another Martian survivor of that war, back to Earth to be pilloried as a sign of man's displeasure with his arrogance, and finally to Titan, where he again meets the man ostensibly responsible for the turn of events that have befallen him, Winston Niles Rumford, who is a giant asshole.
Yeah.
I do not like this character.
Well,
I did at the beginning, and then as it progressed, I did not like this character.
Well, out of like, because as we get in, how we'll get into it, that character is like living throughout all of time.
Yeah.
Have you ever met any character like that has that like ability in any fiction?
That's not douche?
Yeah, that's not douche. Like, I don't think you can not be a douche.
What's his name from Slaughterhouse-5 wasn't a douche. I can't remember his name now, but because he gets stuck out of time and he can see all time at once and just visit. He wasn't a douchebag, but everyone else, like Dr. Manhattan and stuff like that. Rumford comes from a wealthy New England background. His private fortune was large enough to fund the construction of a personal spacecraft, and he became a space explorer. So he's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. One of them kind of
It's so weird how, like, relevant
a
lot of the stuff in this book is, too.
I don't like it. Traveling between Earth and Mars, his ship, carrying Rumford and his dog, Kazik, entered a phenomenon known as a chronosynclastic infundibulum. I really did not look forward to reading that. I don't know if that's how you pronounce infundibulum.
Sounds good to me.
He says it so many times in this book too, and I'm like, God damn it! In my head, I'm just like infundibulum.
Yeah.
Which is defined in the novel as those places where all the different kinds of truths fit together. When they enter the infundibulum, Rumford and Kazik become wave phenomenon, somewhat akin to the probability waves encountered in quantum mechanics. They exist along a spiral stretching from the sun to the star Betelgeuse. When a planet such as the Earth intersects their spiral, Rumford and Kasich materialize temporarily on that planet. And there's a lot of materialization, and there's some cool stuff with how that works, too, in this book. And I, for the life of me, could not figure out the science to tell you, but it was quite interesting, those experiences that you get to live through the other characters. When he entered the chronosynclastic... God damn it, even in this they say it a million times. When he entered the chronosynclastic infundibulum, Rumford became aware of the past and future. Throughout the novel, he predicts events. Unless he is deliberately lying, the predictions come true. It is in this state that Rumford establishes the Church of God, the utterly indifferent. And that's where the humor really starts to spike in this, the sarcastic, almost Douglas Adams kind of humor. It's just like the God is indifferent. And religion's a big theme in this book, but he does it in a really funny way. So anyway, the God of the utterly indifferent on Earth to unite the planet after a Martian invasion. It is also in this state that Rumford, materializing on different planets, instigated the Martian invasion, which was designed to fail spectacularly, so it was purposeful that all these people were just going to die on his behalf. On Titan, the only place where he can exist permanently as a solid human being, Rumford befriends a traveler from Tralfamadori, a world that also figures in Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-5, among others, who needs a small metal component to repair his damaged spaceship. And those were the aliens in Slaughterhouse-5 that mess with... They see time at all aspects and can visit time whenever they want. And they have the human zoo and all that stuff.
And they're robots.
They're robots in this, but on that one, I thought they were like eyeball monsters or something.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
He might have just changed it.
Yeah.
I mean, this was way earlier than Slaughterhouse-5, so he could have just changed it, but used the same name. Sallow, the Tralfamadorian explorer, is a robot built millennia earlier to carry a message to a distant galaxy. Oh, so maybe Sallow is just the robot and built by the beings. That makes more sense. His spacecraft is powered by the Universal Will to Become, or UWTB, the prime mover, which makes matter and organization wish to appear out of nothingness. I love that he didn't even try to create science for the space travel and all this shit. He was just like, just the Universal Will to Become. You could just do it. It's magic.
But though, like, a lot, considering, like, the time that it was written, like, the science isn't too, like, it's not terrible.
No, for, like, the more practical things, but when it just comes to the actual propulsion of the ship.
Oh, well, yeah.
Man, it's just space magic. UWTB, Vonnegut informs the reader, was responsible for the universe in the first place and is the greatest imaginable power source. A small component on Sallow's spacecraft breaks and strands him here in the solar system for over 200 millennia. He requests help from Tralfamadori, and his fellow Tralfamadorians respond by manipulating human history so that primitive humans evolve and create a civilization in order to produce the replacement part. So essentially everything that happened from the Great Wall of China to human society in the modern era is all just
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, or basically just failed messages, or some of them succeeded, but it's essentially these aliens sending messages through the humans building shit to the robot guy to read, and it would be like, we're coming. And that would be like the Great Wall of China. Stonehenge would be like,
should be there in a few more
millennia, whatever. Like, it's so ridiculous. Rumford's encounter with the chronosynclastic infundibulum, the following war with Mars and Constance exiled to Titan were manipulated via the Tralfamadorians' control of the UWTB. Stonehenge, the Great Wall of China, and the Kremlin are all messages in the Tralfamadorian geometrical language informing Sallow of their progress. Which, again, was very basic and stupid things that they shouldn't even have to send like that. But as it turns out, the replacement part is a small metal strip brought to Sallow by Constant and his son Chrono, born of Rumford's ex-wife. A sunspot disrupts Rumford's spiral, sending him and Kasich separately into the vastness of space. An argument between Rumford and Sallow moments before concerning the contents of Sallow's message, left unresolved because of Rumford's disappearance, leads the distraught Sallow to disassemble himself, thereby stranding the humans on Titan. It is revealed that the message was a single dot meaning greetings in Tralfamadorian. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like this, they send
that's for nothing.
Send this stupid robot across all time and space and fucks up all of humanity's progression just to say greetings to some you don't even know who. Chrono chooses to live among the Titanian birds. After 32 years, his mother dies and Constant manages to resemble Sallow. Using the part delivered so many years previously by Chrono, Constant repairs the Tralfamadorian saucer. Sallow wishes to place the aging Constant at a shuffleboard court, but Constant insists on being dropped off in Indianapolis, where he dies of exposure in wintertime Indianapolis while awaiting an overdue city bus. A very sad way to go. As he passes away, he experiences a pleasant hallucination secretly implanted in his mind by a compassionate Sallow. The Sirens of Titan largely deals with questions of free will, with multiple characters being stripped of it and the revelation that humanity has been secretly manipulated for millennia for an inane purpose, playing major roles in the story. Free will and the lack thereof become major themes of Vonnegut's later novels, especially Slaughterhouse-Five and Breakfast of Champions, another one we need to read. More broadly speaking, lack of agency has been a hallmark of Vonnegut's novels, with the protagonist struggling against forces they can never overcome and often can't comprehend. None of the characters in the Sirens of Titan have chosen to be in their position, but are driven by forces and wills besides their own, and can do no more than try to make the best of it. At the end of the book, Constant concludes, "A purpose of human life, no matter who is controlling it, is to love whoever is around to be loved." So, before we get into our official breakdown here, what was your overall review of this book out of 5?
I'm struggling between like a 3 and a 4.
I'm the same. I gave it a 3 on Goodreads. I'd probably give it a 3.5 just because I did enjoy it. Yeah. But it was like kind of like a middle of the road novel. It wasn't anything spectacular. It was entertaining enough to hold your interest, but it wasn't enough to leave me with any, real strong feelings one way or the other. Wasn't a bad book by any means, but there are a couple parts where I zoned out just because the writing was very repetitious and he would name the whole whatever, like he was talking about, it was almost like a David Foster Wallace where he just names a bunch of random shit and like for what purpose? I don't know. But like I said, it was entertaining. It's worth a read. I recommend it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially if you're a fan of old science fiction. It'd be interesting to compare that to like a newer science fiction story that deals with the same themes of like the overall themes like time travel and stuff, not the the free will and the war and religion and all that stuff. But what was your major takeaway of this? I mean, like, story aside, just like some of the major themes that it dealt with, like that little thing I read at the end there about the free will was the major one.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that a lot. Like the debate against free will is everything you've done in your life, and every moment and experience is what creates your next moment and experience. Yeah. So, every time you've done something, that's going to lead you to whatever you do next. So technically, do you have free will, or are you predestined to do what you're going to do based on previous experiences?
One thing I like about those kind of stories is and you kind of get that a little bit in this story too, is like Rumfeld is setting everything up, but it's like, is he even setting it up?
Well, he's controlled too.
Yeah, like it's like he's kind of like, is he the puppet master, or is he just another puppet of, you know what I mean? Like,
and then the aliens, who's controlling? If they're controlling him, who's controlling them? It goes on and on. Yeah, because the aliens had to control him, because basically what it was, the Tralfamadorians or whatever they are, they one way or another made it so Rumford is controlled. He thinks he has free will, but I think they set it up.
Are they the one who caused his accident?
Which seems like a ridiculous stretch, because what they need is that little piece that Chrono, the son of not Malachi, the son of Malachi, and was her name Beatrice, which is Rumford's wife. Their son Chrono, who is I think born and raised on Mars, he has a little lucky charm, which is a little piece of metal. And that turns out to be the missing piece for Salo's ship that sends him away, I believe.
Now, did you say in your review that the Tralfamadorians, or however you say that, they're the ones who started the Mars base, or is that Rumfeld?
Well, Rumford got the technology for spaceships and everything from Salo's designs, from his saucer and the universal will to become. So that's how that came about. But the aliens, I think, set it up so Rumford would do all this work so that kid would be born, so the kid would get the piece of metal, and then they could finally end up giving the metal back to Salo for his ship. Seems very convoluted and unnecessary. Like, why couldn't they find an easier way to get that piece of metal?
But I mean, like, who started the Martian... you know what I mean? Who was...
Rumford, I believe.
But I mean, like, he was the one behind... Like, he made all the bases and all the stuff there, and he was the one bringing the people back, or was he just jumping to those places in time?
I think he did everything. Like I said, he used Salo's knowledge, but because what he does on Mars is he sets it up so he pretty much enslaves a bunch of humans to create this army. He puts these antennas in their head and wipes their memories, which also goes with the free will thing, because, if you wipe somebody, like, because at some point, Malachi becomes Unk.
Yeah.
He's just this random guy in the army, and it switches very abruptly to this scene. And because he's going on all these drug benders and stuff on Earth. He's the richest guy on Earth. He's doing all this shit. And essentially what replicates the stock market, like the mirrors the stock market crash, the 1930s, there's like a great economic downfall where...
I think people just stopped investing in him because he was...
Well, it was an economic downfall of his own creation, but obviously since he's the richest man on Earth, that's going to spread out.
Yeah.
But it was like the whole economy crashed or anything. It was just like, because he had a party and he was just signing away oil wells to like random women and all these businesses he had. He was just flubbing and fucking everything up.
Because like they do a cool little thing in the beginning of this book where they tell you exactly what's going to happen in the book, how it's going to happen, and when it's going to happen.
And then it all does.
And it actually happens that way. So, like, Rumfield is telling Malachi that, hey, you're going to go to Mars. You're going to be where me and my wife. You're going to have a kid together. You're going to go to Mercury. You're going to come back to Earth, and then you're going to go to Titan. And to do that, he throws this big party and, tries to get rid of all of his money so he doesn't sell his stock in the space building business and all that stuff. But because of that, he's in such a downturn that whenever they do ask him if they want to come with him, he's just like, yeah. Yeah,
but he's going to go to jail and everything, too, I think. Or he was going to, he owed people so much money, he's going to go broke. Just because he was getting sued, too.
Yeah.
Because didn't, one of his products, cigarettes or something, it was, I think it caused cancer or something awful. But, yeah, so the free will thing, everything that happens to him was predestined, which is very interesting because he's kind of a selfish jerk for most of, the beginning of the book. And then when he becomes Unk and he has his mind wiped, it's almost like he's just reset, factory reset. And then it's like, oh, well, he hasn't had all these experiences and growing up rich, but his father wasn't around and all this stuff. So it's like he never becomes even though he's an adult, his mind was wiped. So it's like he never became the person that he did. So he's just default settings. This is your base. If you go with the free will explanation of everything you've ever done leads up to what you're going to do, well, now you don't know what he's going to do because, he never did anything. His mind's wiped, but he's controlled by someone else.
Yeah, well, and also, his mind got wiped multiple times.
Multiple times because on the fringes, there's always something there, and he writes himself these notes, and then he keeps finding the notes, and he ends up killing his best friend, but he doesn't know it. The army makes him strangle his best friend, but he doesn't know it was his best friend when he did it. That plays a major role in here. I like the whole thing on Mercury where they get sent to Mercury and they go in the caves. And because Rumford sets it up so the Martian army is just going to lose.
Yeah.
They're going to go attack Earth, every country on Earth, and they're just going to get annihilated.
Well, yeah, because he comes and he tells the people of Earth, hey, Mars is coming.
Yeah, he does it so he can start his own stupid religion, which works. But 99% of the Martians, they all die and stuff. But he sends a guy named, was it Boak?
Something like that. I wasn't sure exactly how to pronounce it.
I don't say Boak. Him and Unk, a.k.a. Malachi, he sends them to Mercury, and they think it's an accident. They think they don't know where they're at. He sends them way underground, and then they live with these things called harmoniums, and they're just diamond-looking, aqua-colored blobs or something that just live off the vibrations of Mercury. It's very interesting. And then that goes with the isolation and the loneliness because they're stuck there. And then these two guys end up hating each other. Well, I don't think that Bozak guy or whatever really hates Unk. It's just he's Unk doesn't like him or whatever. So he goes and just wanders. And they take these things called goofballs. It's a goofy science. Yeah. It's supposed to oxygenate the blood. And then you can just basically not breathe and be alive.
Yeah, you plug up your nose and your ears, I think.
Yeah, so the vacuum doesn't explode you or whatever. But yeah, so it's very shitty science on that. But they take these goofballs and they essentially have enough food and supplies they could just live on Mercury forever with these harmoniums. But Unk gets all frail and gross. The Boak guy, he gets in really good shape and he loves it there. He loves those harmoniums. Feels like he can't do any bad there, and ultimately he chooses to stay there with them. Well,
it also gets I almost get a symbiote kind of feeling because they start feeding off of him too.
They feed off of his heartbeat, because they feed off of sound and vibration. But he likes them, so he stays there. And there's actually a very sad scene where a bunch of them end up dying because he's negligent for a minute, mainly because of Unk. But they were stuck there because the ship could only go down and 3 years they're stuck in this caves of Mercury, and they don't know how to get up and get out. And then what it turns out is they just have to flip the ship upside down so it could go up, thinking up is down.
Yeah.
It's very cool how he wrote that, but very goofy as well. But anyway, Ankh, he comes back to Earth, and he's celebrated as a hero, the space wanderer, because that's what Rumford told everyone in his religion, that this guy's going to come back and, I don't know, be the savior or whatever of mankind, which is not what ends up really happening.
No.
And there's a very weird society that has developed because of this religion. They handicap themselves.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're really pretty, you put on really ugly makeup and a wig and make yourself ugly. If you're really strong, you add 50 pounds of weights on your back. And, like, they make it so everyone's equal in some way. So if you have great eyesight, you put glasses on to make your vision blurry. It's, like, really weird. That I didn't quite understand the purpose of. Like, why would anyone... Like, because they were all very happy. That was weird. Like, all society was happy. Everybody was peaceful. It's like, why would you be so happy to handicap yourself? Like, I don't know how you talk anyone into that one, but in the 50s, maybe it was different.
Though, I mean, when you got a guy who, and it's known that he is coming in and out of time, because it was like
they make big spectacles of it.
Yeah, especially like even in the beginning of the novel, like that's a big thing. Like Malachi had to come in a disguise to his house so people wouldn't know who the person was. That
was
came
a big
to
killer dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone would line up and they would want to see it like it's a show. And that happens I forget what it was, couple months or something.
Like 3 months or something.
But anyway, to cut this a little short, so Malachi, he's the space wanderer and the prophecy and all this stuff. They bring him back to the house of Rumford on Earth, which is where he met Beatrice, his wife, Rumford's wife, who Malachi ends up, impregnating with Chrono. She got her mind wiped too, and then Chrono didn't know.
Yeah, but because she had the kid where they were at Mars, like he wants to go and tries to find them because they've already had this kid and stuff, and
they didn't know him, so they essentially want nothing to do with him.
Well, they don't, or they just don't remember him from mind wipes.
Well, Chrono, I don't think got mind wiped. I think he just didn't meet him. But he had no interest in him. He's a little badass kid. Like, anyway, they, again, predestined. They have no free will, even if they think they do. So they're sent to Earth, and they live, and then they're running a little, as I called it, a Malachi shop. Yeah. They were selling little Malachi dolls.
Yeah, because he's like, Malachi becomes like the antithesis of like what you...
The religion, yeah.
Yeah, of like what you should not be like, you know.
Yeah, that's why he celebrated, because he was, there's a big unveiling where it turns out, oh, you are Malachi Constance, this fucking evil, not necessarily evil, but slothish, fucking no good. You got all your fortune by luck, and we don't believe in luck anymore, and we don't believe God helps anyone. And because his dad created this fortune by just picking random words out of the Bible, and then like he'd base whatever words he got off of stock market shit or something, and then as he just invest all his money into random shit based out of the Bible, well, since God is indifferent in their new religion, Malachi's fortune and everything that came with it could not be God-given because God doesn't care. Yeah. So he's just this slothful, fucking useless guy, and everyone hates him. It's like, don't be like a Malachi. And then they have sipping him and his family, Beatrice and Chrono, which they get a really raw deal. Yeah. Because Beatrice, like, she just married Rumford. That was her whole mistake in life. And Chrono hasn't, like, why is he picked on? Because he was just a kid.
Well, they were married before he got stuck in the Chronos from Tiberium, and like it's like, and then once that happened, like, because they even say like he has, she doesn't see, because she doesn't like seeing him come and go, like it freaks her out.
Yeah, she doesn't like him anymore, and he always tells her bad news.
So I imagine before that, like their marriage was, but they never
had sex. It specifically stated that she just was like pure or something. She wouldn't have sex with him or anything. And what happens is Constant rapes her, by the way, which I don't know if you remember that scene. It was very fucked up. I think it was like in a dark room or something. And again, Rumford set it up. So it was almost like a thing. It's like Constance.
But then again, it's like, did he set it up?
Well, I'm pretty sure he did. But it was like, okay, so Malachi is like the evil raper guy too on top of everything. But at the same time, when I was reading that scene, I was like, doesn't seem like he really wants to rape her, because he went out of his way to make himself detestable to this woman so she would not like him at all, because he didn't want the future to happen that Rumford said it would, because Rumford tells him at the beginning, you're going to marry my wife, you're going to have a baby with her, and you're going to go live on Titan. He's like, I don't want that shit. What the fuck? So he does everything he can, and she does too. Does everything they both can, so this won't happen. But then it all still comes together. And I think what it was he didn't know it was this lady. He just thought it was some beautiful. I forget, it was like a general or something. It was when he was Unk, wasn't it? Yeah, it was when he was Unk and he had his mind wiped, I believe. And like the general or somebody was like, hey, I think it was actually Rumford dressed as a general. He was like, hey, the most beautiful woman you could ever want is behind that door. And he like really like talks him into it. And I feel like he used the antenna to get him in there, maybe.
Probably.
Because it causes this antenna in their head causes such pain that they have to obey. That's why you got all the Martians to pretty much commit suicide by invading the Earth. It was something along those lines. So it was like, okay, he like raped her, but it wasn't necessarily a free will rape, you know? It was terrible, but it's the same. You can't really fault the guy if he had no choice. So they ship them on. They put him on a ship, send him off to Titan, and that's where Rumford actually lives. Like he can be physical. His physical body lives there all the time. He doesn't dip in and out of the existence there. And he lives with the robot Salo, and he lives on his mansion he built, where he had Martians build. He has a fight with the robot, and he's sick because something with the sun flares or something. Long story short, he ends up, he goes away. He's just off into infinity now. No more Rumford.
Well, like, the way that I understood that was, like, as, like, because, like, he was just jumping around, like, in our solar system.
Yeah.
Now he's jumping around throughout the universe. So he's not
gone.
Like dead, but he's just going different places.
Yeah, he doesn't like exist on. Well, the thing is, he doesn't exist on Titan anymore like he did because he was permanent there. He's not permanent there now. He's just in the universe.
See, and I always took that like that. That was kind of like that's where like he always came back to. Like he'd go from Titan to like Earth, back to Titan to Mars to Titan. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think he went to those other places, but he specifically was always on Titan, I think. So it was like Dr. Manhattan's situation where he could be in multiple places. That's what I got from it. But anyway, he gets in a fight with the robot because he finds out about the aliens that made him do all this stuff, and he finds out there was no free will and this whole stupid thing with the messages on Earth. And he was like, "This sucks, this bullshit."
Well, he's mad because Solo wouldn't tell him what the message was.
Well, that was the final nail in the coffin because he unbefriends him like right before that. But then, like, that was the nail in the coffin. He wouldn't tell him that it was just greetings. Then the robot actually does decide to tell him, but then he's already gone. Then you have Chrono, Malachi, and I think they just call her B by this point. They're living on the planet. She ends up moving into the mansion. Malachi's just a mountain man, and then Chrono goes and lives. He lives with a bunch of fucking giant bluebirds. It's really weird. She eventually dies. Malachi, sad. The kid, he's just making a weird nest, and I don't know. The kid's real weird. Salo fixes the ship, and then he ends up sending Malachi back to Earth. He wants to send him to Florida where it's nice and warm. He's like, no, I want to go to shitty Indianapolis, even though I've never been there. Goes there in the middle of the winter. He sits on a bench waiting for the bus. Dies of exposure, and like the synopsis said, he has a hallucination. You know, I didn't really understand what brought that about. That was something like Salo implanted?
Like Silo hypnotized him.
So it was like a hallucination.
That whenever he died,
it'd be like a happy.
Yeah, and that's what his happy moment was, him meeting Stoney. Yeah. That he strangled earlier in the novel without realizing.
Yeah. So I didn't like any character in this book.
But you're not supposed to.
No, you're not. A lot of it you could tell was taken from, like I mentioned earlier, about the loneliness of Vonnegut's parents not like being there. This guy's dad, he only meets him once when he's in his 20s, and then like that's it. Like a lot of stuff's taken from Vonnegut's life, but I think that was just because he had to write the book real fast. Like that's kind of slapped together, but it was really good. Like the aspects of like his critiques on war, because obviously he was very strong.
He's anti-war, anti-religion.
Yeah, like the anti-religion, how the weirdness of the religion that they create and stuff. Like the biggest thing was the free will, but like the main ending's more of like the anti-religious stuff. Then like the anti-war messages just all throughout. Like I said, I enjoyed the book. I didn't really take anything, and again, it's just supposed to be a fun sci-fi story. Probably, I don't think you're really supposed to take any deep, like not like Slaughterhouse 5. Like you're taking like deep messages away from it.
There's also so much like crammed into this book.
Yeah, that's what the lack of an editor really shows.
Because like I remember seeing somebody said like that, and because the book's not that big, it's barely over like 300 pages, and it has more crammed in it than most novelists is like have book like twice that size.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a good showing of, like, you know, like the dark humor that Vonnegut kind of gets known for, and that, like, the kind of satire kind of stuff that he does, you know, or I don't know if satire is the right word, but kind of like his commentary on life or what's going on.
You really get to see a writer emerging with his own original voice in this, but not quite there.
Yeah.
You get to see Vonnegut touching on all those things that made him famous, and why Slaughterhouse-5 is so good. But he's not quite there yet. He doesn't know how to put it together necessarily. He could tell an interesting story. It was really funny. But like I said, none of the characters were likable. And even though they're not supposed to, you kind of need somebody to care for, right? Like, can you name any character in this whole book that you really gave a shit about?
I mean, like, in the beginning, I, like, Malachi, like, it not, like, yeah, maybe I didn't like him, but, like, I liked reading him. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, you're interested in reading all of them. That's why Vonnegut's so good. Like, you're interested in reading about the characters. You just don't like any of the characters, which means you don't have any, like, you don't care about their outcome, really. That's my only problem, is when you don't like any of the characters, or you don't have strong dislike for any of the characters, you really have no stakes in what happens to them. Whatever the consequences for their actions are, it's like, okay, good. Whatever. Yeah. So, like, Malachi dies, his family, they live old, but they die in exile on Titan. You're like, okay, so what? Rumford, he was probably the most detestable character, but he was also probably the most likable character at the beginning until it unveils, like, what he's doing. And then you're just like, oh, I don't know, fuck that guy, I guess. But then you find out it was the aliens. You're like, well, I mean, what would you do? Like, again, the free will thing. It's hard to like anybody or dislike anybody when you know their actions aren't because of, free will. Like, it's not their actions. It's the actions that they have to perform for other people, whether they know it or not. Which that actually brings up a really interesting writing point. How do you write a character who is likable or dislikable if the reader knows that it's not their actions? It's like if you programmed a robot to kill people. Are you mad at the robot for killing people? No, you'd be mad at the person who programmed them, right? Yeah. But what if you don't know who programmed them? Who you mad at? Like that's a conundrum. But yeah, I would recommend this book. I'm really interested to read Vonnegut's other stuff. I do want to read his first novel, but I almost kind of want to skip back and forth between original like first novels to later novels to maybe... Just because now it's going to be hard. Because, like, I started with Slaughterhouse-5 is the first major book of his I read. Yeah. So I'm just like, that's kind of hard to go from, like, his best work to just, like, a middling average novel. And it's like, if I read another middling average novel, like his first novel or something, I might not like him as much. And I might not want to read something else that's better.
Now, should we take a moment and talk about the debate when it comes with some of his work of, like, the
literary and sci-fi.
Yeah, kind of thing we've kind of talked about before offline. Well, on podcasts.
I think we discussed it on the podcast briefly about, like, why is Vonnegut considered literature when he was mainly a sci-fi writer, but when you read, like, Slaughterhouse-5, complete sci-fi story, and other than the Dresden World War stuff, it doesn't really read like any kind of literature. But then, because it's so fun and it's like a ridiculous story, but then when you like really go into the themes and stuff, that's straight literature. So it's like, I get why he's lumped into literature, why he's considered great literature, but at the same time, like Slaughterhouse-5, like somebody says that, yeah, that's fucking fine, literature there, but you never hear that about any of his other work.
Yeah.
So it makes me think, it's like, I think he's just like a genre writer that just happened to break through with like a great book.
Well, from what I've heard, it's like the later books are more kind of lean to the Slaughterhouse-5 of his like more literary kind of work. Again, in one of the reviews I heard that he always was trying to get rid of like that sci-fi, like, like he didn't want to be clumped
that stigma,
in yeah. Like, I'd be interested, like, back then, what he was categorized as, like, you know what I mean? It would have just been like a sci-fi genre writer, right? Like,
I would think so.
Because I think it's only now with the passing of time that people are like... Now, I'm sure back then, too, people were like, oh, yeah, check out these themes and the stuff that he's talking about. But again, I don't think it's until the passing of time that really kind of gets cemented in.
Well, I might be mistaken in this, but I always felt the scenes in Slaughterhouse-5 where, again, I don't remember the fucking main guy's name, but the protagonist is in, like, I think... Is it a mental hospital? Yeah, I think it's a mental hospital. and he's there with some other guy that I think might have also been in the war. I forget. But that guy loves these pulpy like this one pulpy sci-fi writer. And Vonnegut makes a point to keep pointing out how like this sci-fi writer tells great stories, but is a really shitty writer.
Yeah.
And all he does is write sci-fi. And why can't he write real literature and like all this stuff? And I was like, is
he just talking about himself now?
Is that just his feelings towards himself? I'm just a shitty, like I tell great stories, sci-fi stories, but I'm not a great writer. Is that, I always thought that was maybe, I don't know if it was purposeful or not, but he might have felt a certain way about that. I don't think he wanted to be known as just a sci-fi writer. And again, that could also come from his highfalutin background before his family went poor.
Yeah.
Because they did have fancy tea parties and all that shit. So
I didn't realize he was still alive until like, I think it was like the mid 2000s, I think. Like I didn't think he died until like 2007, 2008, I think. I wish I would have got into his stuff whenever I was a little bit younger, whenever he was still like around.
Well, when was the bombing of Dresden? Like 1940 something?
So yeah, I think.
So,
I'm not good with history.
Assuming he was 18 to 24 at that time, yeah, it's crazy. Like he was pretty old then. He must have been in his 90s, 80s or 90s when he died. I think the last thing he wrote was actually a letter to a high school kid that wrote to him. It was like a really good letter, from what I remember. So anyway, folks, check out the Sirens of Titan. Should I unveil it, Spencer?
Unveil what?
We always wait till the end of the year to talk about our next year's book goals.
Oh, okay.
But I think I have a plan for next year's reading list already.
Okay.
And maybe I'll run it by you real quick. Or should we do it off air? You know what? We'll do it off air.
Off air?
Because we'll save it. Because it might change by the time the Christmas episode or the New Year's episode rolls around.
That's fair.
But anyway, folks, check out the Sirens of Titan. I only brought that up because I'm trying to think, like, what is our next book? We're actually going to read, what is that book called? The Boogeyman book?
Chasing the Boogeyman.
We're going to be reading Chasing the Boogeyman for October's book of the month.
By Richard Chasmar. I'm pretty sure is how you pronounce his last name.
Is it a Casmar?
I think it might be Casmar now that you
Casmar? That sounds better than Chasmar.
Yeah.
What if it's like Malachi Malachi? Like, it could be completely wrong. So anyway, folks, if you want to get on that, start reading that now.
Because that's going to be the Halloween.
That's our Halloween book. And by the way, if you go to drunkenpenwriting.com, we are open for Halloween submissions now. I already got a handful in, but I got them in before I even put up the post. So I have a feeling they might come in like hotcakes, or it'll be one of those years where we just get those 5 and no more after that.
I mean, that wouldn't.
I don't really want to edit all that stuff, so I'll read all. But anyway, so Chasing the Boogeyman. And you can follow us on Twitter at DrunkpenWriting, Instagram, Facebook at DrunkenpenWriting. And we've been, I think, posting stuff. I don't fucking know. Anyway,
just been putting stuff on there.
Yeah, and you know what? If you love our book of the month, which I don't think anybody does, you can give us a review and tell us about it at iTunes or something. I don't fucking know. So yeah, YouTube the Sirens of Titan if you want better reviews, because I'm sure they're out there. So thank you for listening. We'll check you out next time.